Oh yes, finally this arc has started to show some nitty gritty storytelling. This is our first real instance, in my opinion, onto seeing the dark side of the prison under the Mujina Bandits' reign. Yo, what's going on, Senpai Squad? Welcome back to the Shonen Central YouTube channel. My name is Harrison Senpai. Now, before we jump into this review, you guys know the drill by now. Make sure to leave a like on this video if you did enjoy the episode, and be sure to answer today's question of the day in the comment section down below. Now, today's question of the day, it's a really simple one, but I'm really excited to see your guys' answers because I think it's going to test your guys' creativity, and it quite simply is, how do you think they're going to escape this prison? But with all of that stuff out of the way, let's jump into today's review. So the episode starts off with us seeing the gang a little bit suspicious over Kokiri. Now, if you cast your minds back to last week when I was discussing Kokiri, I started to grow a little bit suspicious about him as well. I didn't fully trust how truthful he was being about everything. But this episode did seem to clear up any confusion or suspicion that we had over him by showing us the truth and his backstory. Or so we can believe anyway. Because this is still, in my opinion, should be somewhat up for interpretation, because you've got to remember that these guys are criminals. They are prisoners in Hozuki Castle. You have to take everything they say with a pinch of salt. There's no saying that Kokiri told the 100% truth. Maybe he twisted a little bit of his backstory into making him more favourable with Boruto. You never know. It just depends completely on whether or not the writers behind this arc, whether Kodachi and the rest of his writing team are somewhat brave enough, potentially you could use that word, or adventurous enough, maybe is a better way of putting it, to actually go down and do that plot twist in this arc. That being said, if you do take a look into Kokiri's backstory, or from himself anyway, I'll be honest, it does seem to somewhat suit his character, his personality, so I am leaning more towards, yeah, he is telling the truth. I think that is his backstory, just because I feel like I was saying last week, he's too almost like pathetic to be a Mujina gang member, really. He's too scared, he's too vulnerable. And I feel like his backstory sort of casts a light onto why that is, because he's not a criminal. He's just an accountant who was basically in the wrong place at the wrong time and just got severely unlucky. We find out that essentially he just somewhat unluckily found himself in the possession of the Mujina Bandits' money, and the only thing he could really decide what to do with it was to donate that to a children's hospital for medical research. Now, this very inspirational backstory does in fact link in with another very important character from this episode, and you have to forgive me because I don't know these prisoners' names really outside of Kokiri, for example. All I know is it's the guy with the blonde Mohican. Now, this guy is sat down sort of in an interrogation format with Benga, who, may I add, has become the temporary interim lord of the prison as Lord Mujo's health takes a very, very sudden turn for the worst, moments after he was actually in the middle of sacking Benga after he finds out that he's untrustworthy of being the chief warden. And with this interrogation scene, we see just truly how much of a horrible piece of trash Benga really is, as he spends the entirety of this prisoner's saved up, albeit against the rules, yes, I understand, but he used up all of his saved up money just to buy a load of burgers. Bear in mind, this is the money that he's been saving up for when he gets out of prison to put towards his little sister's medical research. And I'm sure you can see, all of you, where this is going, and I hold my hands up right now. I didn't actually catch on to this while I was originally watching the episode. Now, whether or not that just shows my lack of attention span or something like that, or if it is actually reason for a round of applause to the writers for making that really touching emotional link between those two characters. but with the use of bribery, which we know Benga is so fond of using in this prison. He puts this prisoner up to the task of spying on Boruto and Mitsuki to find out their true relationship with Kokiri. And thus it becomes a sort of you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours scenario between the two of them, as Benga offers up the possibility of the prisoner seeing his younger sister outside of the prison if he does deliver on this mission. Now, I'm sure if you're all following the script, I think it's fairly obvious that Benga he had no intention of letting that actually be the case. He was definitely going to go behind his back. So I was really pleased to see when, I'm going to have to find this guy's name because he's too good to be just referred to as that guy. So yeah, it looks like his name was Kamata. I do apologise, Kamata, but I'm so happy for just seeing him go behind Benga's back like that. It was really satisfying. So we see Boruto, Sarada and Mitsuki trying to get the information out of Kokiri, and they do a really smart improvised bit of play acting. Genjutsu is what they use to actually find out the secrets of the money. And while we're on the topic of the Genjutsu, can we just talk? Sarada's Sharingan, as always, looked absolutely beautiful in this episode. I think the Boruto anime, the art, I've always been a massive fan of the art and animation for the majority of the whole series, really, and I just love the glare and the flares and just the highlights on the Sharingan. Oh, it's just a little side note, I think it looked absolutely stunning. But anyway, she essentially casts this Genjutsu onto Kokiri to make him think that Tsukio is there in front of him, threatening to kill him if he doesn't tell him the location of the money. And obviously, Kokiri, thinking that it's Tsukio, it's sort of, if he was actually working with Tsukio, he would have been like, well, why are you asking this? You know the deal that we've got. But then, on the other hand, we see what actually happens. He absolutely craps himself. He, like a true coward almost, he does just tell straight out what he's done with the money, and that is how I suppose Boruto and everyone sort of gained the truth out of this situation. And it was a really smart and improvised way for them to do so. I really enjoyed it. And so, like I said, we find out his backstory, and like I said, a very emotional or very inspirational, very unlucky backstory. But during all of this, we find out that actually Kamata is spying in on their conversation, and this is where he learns that the money was donated to a children's hospital. Now, straight away, he doesn't quite catch on. He thinks, this is brilliant. I found out their true purpose. They're Leaf Shinobi. I can go to Benga. I can go see my little sister. This is going to be brilliant. I can wrap them in, essentially, because he's a prisoner. He doesn't really have that much of a bond for them. He will quite happily offer them up in return of seeing his little sister. But that's when he catches on that all of this money that he donated was, in fact, to aid his little sister's medical advancements. And that's sort of what makes him go behind Benga's back. And he takes a beating for it, but I think this episode, seeing him getting beaten by Benga to the point of where his face is all mushed up and unrecognisable and bleeding, I think it's going to turn Kamata into a real cult hero in the fandom. I think he's going to become a real fan favourite, if this episode hasn't done it already, by the end of the arc for sure. And also, there was a really nice bit in this episode where, during the interrogation scene between the two, actually, we find out that all the letters that Kamata's been writing have been going to his younger sister, and they sort of make out Kamata to be this perfect, complete opposite of what he is, because we know he's known as the coward of the prison, and he's such a cowards out of everything. Whereas in the letters he's been writing, he says he's been travelling, he's been beating up bad guys, he's holding on to scars to show of his courage. And by the end of this episode, he was courageous. He now does have those scars to show his courage, and he was not a coward. So he sort of became the person that his younger sister has always imagined him to be. I actually want to touch on Benga really quickly some more, because obviously we've learned that he's sort of having a little behind the scenes relationship going on with Tsukio's, a little bit of a trading going on between the two. Again, sort of like you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours going on between them as well. And we find out that neither of them are too fond of betrayal, you know. Benga's threatening, like, you don't betray me, I'm still the chief ward around here, I've got the power, and Tsukio's saying, you know, I don't like betrayal either. But what I think is going to happen is, because obviously Benga is such a god complex-esque human, he's just so full of himself, he thinks of himself to be so incredibly powerful, he's so thirsty, so hungry for power, that I think because he's working with the head basically of the prison in terms of the prisoners, essentially with Tsukio, I think he thinks he's so good, he's so strong, he's so powerful, he's so almighty, and I think there'll be nothing better for the end of all this for him to be left with egg on his face if Tsukio goes straight behind his back and, hey, maybe even kills him. But hey, regardless of what I think, it doesn't change the fact that the temporary team up between the two of them does actually end up with Kozuki being transferred to Hozuki Castle number 2, which I didn't quite know existed. It's been a long time since I watched the Blood Prison movie. I've forgotten basically all of it, so I don't know if that was something that originally existed, but it does offer up a little bit of world building potentially if we do actually end up reaching that point. I'm a bit unsure because we do find at the end of this episode that the goal is for them to escape the prison as soon as possible before the opportunity arises, but I would like to see it because, like I said, offers up some extra potential world building. But on top of that, we learn that that's where the rest of the Majina Bandits members are in fact being kept. So I think if we were to go there, it would also offer up some extra lore on the Majina Bandits, which is, I don't care what anyone says, the number one thing I wanted and still want from this arc. The extension portion of this arc, the one thing I wanted more than anything was to expand on the lore of the Majina Bandits that we didn't get to see in the manga. And so far, unfortunately, that's the one letdown I've got. I don't think we've had near enough lore as of right now. That being said, we're only 4 episodes in, so I'm gonna give it a few more. We'll see what direction they take with it. Just, I hope it gets a move on. Overall, I think this was definitely the best episode of the arc so far. It took itself really seriously. It was really dark. Not that the arc wasn't taking itself seriously beforehand, but I feel like this was the sudden twist and shift in tone that sort of makes you think, okay, this is a proper arc now. I can properly start to get invested into this. One little side note I do want to say though, and this is not a criticism towards this arc at all, it's just one little thing, one throwaway comment that I want to put into here. Am I the only one that wants some more soundtracks? Some newer soundtracks in this anime? Because personally, I'm not a massive fan of the new ones. Now, it's purely down to my ignorance maybe because of that, because a lot of these soundtracks I'm so used to hearing in anime original arcs and episodes that try and make it serious, but they're not serious moments, and then they're using them in serious moments, and personally in my opinion it just makes them feel like less serious moments. I don't know, it's just when you think back to like the Urashiki arc, although I wasn't a massive fan of that, the music was switched back to the original Naruto-esque theme tracks, and it made a real difference. In the Momoshiki arc, we had for the Momoshiki fight, we had that soundtrack, which I don't think has been used ever since. I think it's a remix of an old Naruto track, admittedly, but it just makes a difference when we hear some of those soundtracks. So fingers crossed we get some more, a wider range of soundtracks being used, because I do feel like we get the same ones over and over again. But I think that's where we're going to leave the review here. Like I said, really enjoyed the episode. Best episode of the arc by a mile, especially in comparison to last week's. Leave a like on the video, like I said, if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're not ready to become a member of the Senpai Squad. I'll be seeing you guys very, very soon, as always, in another video. But until then, peace.